What is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm BLAIDEN Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, in Matthew Sponauer and THEO Ash. And today we are joined by very special guest from SB Nation, Kofie. Man, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Welcome. How are you doing? You just moved to LA, is that correct?
Yes, I just moved to LA. As you see the background, they're still working on the overall stream room, but I'm glad to be here and big fans of all you guys and what you guys have accomplished and what you guys have done. And it's only up and up for you guys. Honestly, I really respect all you guys do.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. We're glad to have you on.
It's kind of funny. When I first started making videos, people used to tell me that I sounded like you.
Really?
and I didn't understand it, and I don't know, and I still don't know. So for those that said that I sound like Kofie, here he is. You can now compare side by side. But today, the idea of what we're doing, we have each spent some time researching, dissecting, finding teams in the NFL and NBA that are really struggling at this point. And it's our turn to right the ship, right their wrongs, and point them in the correct direction. So starting us off, Mr. THEO Ash NFL, what are you going to do to solve the New Orleans Saints?
You can't solve this in a year. You cannot solve this. They are so screwed, and I regretted it as soon as I took it. I was like, okay, I'll rebuild the Saints. It'll be a challenge. It's impossible. It is impossible. You've got Michael Thomas, who is like 30 years old at this point, never plays.
Is he really?
He's on a huge. He's like 30. Yeah, he was an older rookie. Yeah. So like, even if he does come back from the injury miraculously, and at this point, that's not something you should be betting on. Like, he's still out of his physical prime, right? This is not like a 28-year-old coming back. No, this is a 30-year-old. All right, you've got that. You've got Cameron Jordan on a massive contract. The Ryan Ramczyk deal is about to kick in. Alvin Kamara is on a huge contract. It is just not, you can't just get good off of this unless all of these players like turn it around at late stages in their career and like just all of a sudden they don't become injury prone. And to me, I think you've just got to let the fever run its course. All right. I think that Saints fans will want something done drastically this offseason. They'll want, a complete turnaround. You want to tear it down. But I mean, if you were to cut or trade Michael Thomas, it's tons of dead cap and you're only saving like $2 million. Like, at that point, what's the use? Same thing with Cameron Jordan. Same thing with a lot of these contracts. So to me, like, I honestly think you just bite the bullet and you just let this core grow old. And I don't know what it's almost like the Bucs situation. The Buccaneers and the Saints are in a very similar situation, despite how different their quarterback play is. The Saints obviously have Andy Dalton and Jameis right now, and the Bucs have Tom Brady. But it's a similar deal where they both are way under the cap. They're both old, but they have good players. There is talent on the roster. So the problem is the Saints don't have the first round pick and the Bucs do. And I think the Bucs are going to trade up for a quarterback to alleviate their cap situation and get a big quarterback off the books, bring in a rookie. You've still got good players and, you've got a really cheap quarterback now. I think that's the path forward for the Buccaneers. The Saints, I think, have to follow like a discount version of this. All right. I think that they have to scour the league and find some sort of cheap quarterback, like get rid of Jameis, trade him, get rid of Dalton, and be number 32 in the league in quarterback spending for a couple of years, whether that's you go out and get a Jordan Love, whether that's you go out and find a Marcus Mariota somewhere. Maybe it's Daniel Jones or something like that who hits free agency and, doesn't have a hot market. Like, who knows what it is, but you've got to do. they've got to be bad at quarterback. They've got to let this fever run its course, and they've got to like kind of let this core that they've committed all these resources to, for better or worse, play out. Because if you try to, every year they try to be drastic. Every year they spend all of these crazy picks to go do something, or they sign a bunch of contracts. Like you've made your bed, you've got to lie in it for a while. And I think in a year, next or not next offseason, the offseason after next, then you can start to shed some of these contracts. Then you can start to get rid of Michael Thomas. Then you can start to get rid of Cameron Jordan and maybe Alvin Kamara, and you can move on into the next era. And the 2024 quarterback class is amazing. So if you suck next year, like, you're in a pretty good spot because Caleb Williams is there, May, Ewers. You can get a guy who is crazy talented, really toolsy, and be in a good situation going forward. So it's kind of a boring rebuild at this point. And in terms of what I would specifically do, there's certainly things like, again, like I said, you've got to start someone at quarterback. And I think that a new one would be in order that's not Andy Dalton. Maybe you give Jameis a full year or whatever. But I'm looking at their free agents, and like Jarvis Landry, he doesn't need to get, you want to eventually get younger here. So guys like Jarvis Landry, who's a free agent, age 31, he can go. David Onyemata, I know that he's a good player, but like, let's get younger here. He's 31. I would consider bringing back Marcus Davenport, even though he literally only has half a sack this season. But if I do think that he's talented, and he had a great year in 2021. So if you can bring him on like a severe discount, I would consider doing that. But overall, I would let a lot of these guys go that are, in their 30s. Mark Ingram, he doesn't need to stay around. Jarvis Landry doesn't need to stay around. PJ Williams, the corner, like even a guy like that, he's 30. He doesn't need to stick around. Like, shed these contracts, let them go, and just stink for a year. The 2024 quarterback class is amazing. Shed a year from now, get rid of Michael Thomas. Maybe even at the trade deadline next year, if he's healthy, it's a lot more palatable to trade Thomas than after June 1st of 2023. Then it gets a little bit more useful to trade Michael Thomas. At that point, if he's healthy, trade him to a contender. Trade trade Cameron Jordan to a contender. And then your fire sale starts about a year from now. And that's where I'm at with the Saints. I think they've got to lie in their bed for a while, and it's kind of a boring rebuild, and it's not
so let me get this straight. You're saying the Saints won't be palatable for like 4 years.
I'm saying, yeah. I mean, it could be.
That's fine with me, honestly. I'm fine with that.
Right. The Saints. I don't think anyone should feel too much sympathy for the Saints, just because like all of these, they're like, oh,
we can just restructure.
They've got to.
It'll never come back.
Eventually,
to bite us. Oh, you're
like
so
this was coming for such. Right. For such a long time, it seemed like this day was coming for New Orleans, and they just kept ducking it and dodging it and pushing things into the future. And people are like, how do they keep getting away with it? This is how. So no one should feel bad for this team. No, this isn't a like unfortunate like Chris Ballard and the Colts, which we'll talk about, where it's like, oh man, they trading for Matt Ryan, Luck retired on him suddenly. They needed a stopgap quarterback. Like Ryan was a good idea, but it just didn't work out. Like the Colts, I can kind of feel bad for their situation. Well, maybe not so much anymore with Jeff Saturday, but no one should feel bad for the Saints. And I think like after June 1st of next year, the trade deadline, you've got your fire sale, you're freeing up cap space, you're trading Michael Thomas to a contender. And then in 2024, you go get Caleb Williams because you're going to stink. And that's okay.
But
so that's my rebuild.
I don't know if it's that simple, because it's not like they can just take their medicine and whatever. They have negative $70 million in cap space next season. The reason that is because they keep restructuring and keep restructuring and keep restructuring. But now you're in a position where you'd like to stop doing that, but you do have to field a team. You do have to have 53 players on the roster. And the longer you keep restructuring, the worse it gets. And guys like Kamara, who's probably not really trending up, or Cameron Jordan or Michael Thomas, that's going to make you have dead cap like way, way, way into the future. And it's honestly, even if you wait till 2024, and I think they're going to have a bunch of restructures this year to even make the cap work, because these guys have so much guaranteed money left because they never pay it. They always, push the can down the road here. I think you're going to end up taking away a lot of the advantage of having a young rookie quarterback on a deal like that when you're still paying a bunch of dead money to like the last era's players.
It's certainly not ideal. It's it's certainly not ideal. And when we might see some trades, Alvin Kamara has already been, in some trade talks. We'll see if that happens. I don't really see the use in it when you look at his cap space. Again, it's a little bit tough to see until after the trade, or about the trade deadline time next season. That's when you start to see some real cap space savings for these players. I think there's going to be a lot of undrafted free agents on this roster next season. I think that they're not going to re-sign any of their talent basically this offseason that leaves. And you're really going to have to work the bottom of rosters and undrafted free agents to get a team under the cap. And it's going to be rough. It's going to be really rough. And even then, you're right. Like, there's going to be dead money into the future. It's not an ideal situation for the Saints. You would have liked them to have been in the playoffs and contending for a Super Bowl this year. That was, I think, their plan in this NFC. And I could kind of see the vision a little bit in this NFC, which is bad. They won 9 games last year. And you can think like, getting Michael Thomas back, getting getting some of the offensive line pieces back, Rams check and whatnot. Looks like a top defense. Like, we won't have to start Trevor Siemian. Like, there's a shot. Let's go all in right now. Like, I saw the vision a little bit there with this NFC, but it just didn't work out. And it's not going to be an ideal situation. And I think you're going to have to rely a lot. There's going to be some really bad players starting for them in place of like Onyemata. Their defensive tackle next year is going to be terrible. Like, it's just the way it's got to be. Maybe they can move on from a guy like Demario Davis or Alvin Kamara. Who knows? But to me, I would just work the bottom of the rosters, trust my in league scouts to see if if there's some nobody who gets cut from a practice squad that has some talent. But it's going to be rough for a couple years, and it's certainly not ideal.
Now, what I didn't tell you guys is that after each rebuild, we are supposed to rate it on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst thing you have ever heard, 5 being perfect. And everyone in the comments on YouTube, make sure you do the same, rate everyone's rebuild. And don't be afraid to be disrespectful. We're allowed to do that here. I'm personally going to give Theo yours a 5 because the Saints deserve to go 0-17.
You'll be right on that eventually.
Eventually, that take will age perfectly for me.
I don't know. I would say that I kind of disagree with it. I'm going to give it like a 3. I don't think that they can just sit on their hands and not do anything. I think they absolutely have to. They absolutely have to like restructure a bunch of guys. I don't think there's any they literally have negative $70 million in cap space. And it's the only way out. But like, you look at that David, who were you just talking about?
Onyemata.
Yeah, you know how long his void years stretch into the future? 4 seasons. 4 seasons after this one. Granted, after the first one, which is $10 million next year, it's not that much money. But it's just crazy how long this is going to go on. So I don't know. I don't know what they're going to. I think it's a very tough rebuild. I think it's going to be tough for them to get a quarterback without being really bad.
I'm gonna give it a 4. I don't know if you guys all know this, but like, I'm like an NFL novice and all that. You know, it's like I always watch, like, I'm trying to like still learn about the sport because it's a sport I've never played. You know, you watch like the All 22. I'm learning about all of that, like watching like the Brett Colemans and the QB schools and the YouTube. Like, it's all a new kind of thing to me. But I'm always for just like an absolute dumpster fire yard sale of a rebuild. Just like, get rid of everybody. We're gonna like sim this. I love that always. always, because I'm as a fan of like awful teams all the time. There's always the team that, it's like, oh, we're not gonna go all in on the rebuild, or not gonna go all, and then it just gets you nowhere for like a long period of time, and it's the most frustrating thing to watch and just like sit through for years and years and years. So
as a Hornets fan, I definitely feel that, being the 9th seed over and over and over and over. I think in the NBA, it's like in the NBA, you have literally no option. If you don't tank at some point, it will never work for you. There's so few championship teams I can think of that have like made it work without doing that, or without being bad.
Because you need a Giannis eventually. Like, that's the thing about the NBA.
Right. It's like you need those lottery picks. It's like, who is building around non-lottery picks? Almost no, maybe the Raptors kind of. But I think in the NFL, teams because it's so much, you can turn around a team so much quicker. It's possible not to do it. But I look at a lot of these teams, and I still think more teams should be doing what like the Texans are doing, or the Lions are doing, where it's like, you're just going to have to be bad because it's so hard to get a quarterback any other way.
How much time do you think you spend looking at a screen? Because me personally, between my phone, my laptop, my 2 monitors, my TV behind me, my iPad, I can pretty confidently say that I spend at least half my day on an electronic device. And really, the truth is, whether it's working on your computer or watching TikToks before bed, that amount of blue light exposure can be really damaging for your eyes. And studies have shown that exposure to this much blue light from these devices can lead to things like headaches, eye fatigue, blurry vision, and even trouble sleeping. But worry not, I'm happy to say that our friends over at Felix Gray can help. Their blue light glasses filter 15 times more blue light that can make screen time tough on eyes and disruptive to sleep. But are you still not convinced? Well, what if I told you that wearing these glasses that they gave me could instantly get you looking so much more drippy? Look, I got a pair on myself, and you could look just as beautiful and sick if you had glasses just like these. I always get compliments when I wear mine. You can as well. They frame your face really well. So if you want the best prescription or non-prescription blue light glasses on the market, use our URL, felixgrayglasses.com/stayhot. Again, that is felixgrayglasses.com/stayhot. Free shipping, free returns, free exchanges. felixgrayglasses.com/stayhot.
I have a question for y'all. Do y'all think the NFL should have a lottery in terms of not like 16 teams like the NBA, but maybe like 3 or 5?
I'm a big proponent of the free market draft, and draft picks just become free agents. And that way, bad teams, like a team like, I don't know, the Lions, they just traded away TJ Hawkinson, their tight end. They have so much cap space. For parity, they might be able to sign 3 top 10 picks if it was like that, like that to me brings parity to the league more than anything. Would be these bad teams with tons of cap space, with tons of, everything, tons of resources. They can add a lot of young talent to the roster very quickly. And there's more player choice to go along on top of that. And you won't see guys getting drafted into situations they have absolutely no control over. And to counteract that, teams might be able to offer them a bag right away. So, and they're rookies. So it would be interesting to see what kind of contracts they would fetch in general. It's not a perfect idea, I know, but
it's hard to imagine.
As far if we're going to restructure the draft, I think it works fine without the lottery. I just don't think tanking is as big of a problem as, obviously the Bears are trying to lose, right? They're shedding contracts and they're not fielding a competitive. Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith are they're all the 2 good defensive players, and they're see ya. But I still do think the NFL is a league where there's a good amount of parity right now, even though there's not a lottery. I've never thought of tanking as this. Oh my God,
issue,
the season is ruined because too many teams were tanking for Trevor Lawrence. I didn't feel that way.
Got it.
I don't know. I wouldn't be for it. I wouldn't be against it. Whatever, who cares? But what is more interesting to me than a lottery is free agent draft classes. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or have ever given that any thought.
I have not given that any thought at all. I just like came up. I was like, oh, maybe.
Trust me, Theo is the only one that has thought of that.
I'm not the only one who's thought of that. It would not work I would not be for it in the NBA, because in the NBA, I don't trust
the small
NBA
market, big
players
market discrepancy is just too wide. Like,
dude.
as a Hornets fan, I absolutely promise you, we don't want that.
No one is signing to the Detroit Pistons like on their free will. You know, they're like, oh, these are all the teams. Like, okay, fine, I'll pick Detroit. And
right. At least NFL free agents have shown me, like, the Jaguars did sign free agent. Like, they were able to sign Christian Kirk and Faloranzu Fatakasi, the defensive tackle from the Jets, who's pretty good. Like, they have been able to. Bad teams have been able to splurge in free agency. It has happened in the NFL before. They might have to overpay a little bit, but players will go there.
Right.
In the NBA, I can't remember, like, holy cow, look at this big free agent the Pacers got. Like, who is the last guy?
Right.
So
It doesn't ever happen.
It's always an overpay. It's always dang. It's always a gross overpay that bites the team like years later, and you're just like, okay, well,
you can overpay for the best player you could overpay for would be like a Gordon Hayward level guy. I mean, even like the Tyler Heroes and the Jordan Pooles of the world, it's just like they're just like in free agency, they're just going to get the max, and at that point, they're just going to choose between which teams are willing to offer them the max.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I had one more point on that. My point is also, like, some people will say, well, the small market teams, the perennial losers, they'll never turn it around. No one will ever go there. And I'm like, what? And my counter is the perennial losers never turn it around anyway. Like, even with the draft, when they can force players to go to their team, like, the poverty franchises still remain poverty for like decades at a time. So, like, it can't hurt. It's not going to make it even more severe because it's already pretty severe. So. Right. That's where I'm at with the draft. I like the draft. I'm not like, oh my God, this needs to happen. But it is an idea that interests me. But yeah.
It'd be interesting how trades would work with that if draft picks didn't exist.
Oh,
it would be.
Use trade money.
But it would be.
Like,
maybe you could trade
extra.
Yeah.
That's like damn near bribery. At that point.
The tampering that would go on in that scenario would be unbelievable.
Legendary.
You would have NFL teams tampering with like Arch Manning right now.
High schoolers.
That's kind of why I'm just morbidly curious. That's another thing. Like, I'd like to just see what would happen. Like, what kind of contracts would these guys get? Like, how far would it become like college recruiting? Like, I have no idea what it would become. I would like to see it for like 5 years with the option of like pressing a button and like making it go back to normal if it didn't work. But obviously in real life, kind of once you open that box, it's tough to kind of go back to like, never mind, we're doing drafting again. So right. I don't know. It does intrigue me though. And I do think like in a perfect world, it would be interesting to see if bad teams could add like the top 3 prospects in the draft if they like had enough money. So yeah.
Right.
I guess going to my rebuild, then I took on the Colts, which one of my friends described as the NFL team equivalent of a warm glass of milk, which I always think about. But they're kind of in a similar situation. They just cannot make it happen in one off season, and they've got 2 major problems. Number one is that they have invested all this money in players that are A, like kind of not performing to where they should be, and B, not in incredibly important positions. And I think we're big believers in positional value is maybe a hair overrated, but when you're paying like an off-ball linebacker and a guard all this money, it's not great.
Yeah. And
I just think they haven't built like their overall team building philosophy is caught up with them with that type of stuff. And it doesn't help that, Quentin Nelson is just like not himself, and Shaquille Leonard keeps getting hurt and all this other stuff. The other thing is that you cannot stopgap solutions at quarterback just don't work ever. They don't work. It's not a serious strategy for serious teams.
You don't like the eternal bridge?
Right. It's like that's what. So it's like, oh, we're going to go trade for Matt Ryan. Well, we know how that's going to end. You're going to go trade for Carson Wentz. Well, how is that going to end? And it's like it's just good enough so where if you're like a biased fan of that team, I can talk myself into that. I'm a Panthers fan, so I know as much as anybody. I can talk myself into Teddy Bridgewater or Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield or PJ Walker at this point in an off season, but then you get to the real games and then they start having like real expectations and it doesn't work. So they absolutely, for a franchise that is built, it's major success off of Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, you gotta bite it for a year. The other thing is that like they even if from here on out they lose a bunch, which considering that they just hired like some random retired player from their team to be the head coach.
Respect Jeff Saturday.
Respect Jeff Saturday. There's a real possibility that they could like lose out or close to it. They're going to be picking like they've already won too much. They've already won just a hair too much where they would need to go like winless. And even then, outside of Stroud and Bryce Younger, it's like Hendon Hooker and Will Levis. Are they quite that level where you really want to just go in for them with a bad supporting cast around them? I don't know. And I know they have multiple second round picks. I know they could make some trades, but there's so many other teams that need a quarterback more. Like the Texans have to have a quarterback. They've been without a quarterback for 2 years. The Lions have to have a quarterback. There's other teams that have already stockpiled the assets. So trying to beat out those teams that I think are going to finish worse than them, trying to beat out teams that have already stockpiled more assets, I don't think it's an option. So if I'm them, I am also taking a year, and I'm looking to trade as many guys as I can, to be completely honest. Now, I think they're in a little bit better position than the Saints to trade these guys. And while a lot of them have big dead cap hits, I think
everyone's in a better position than the Saints to trade these guys. The Saints are like, I've never seen anything like it before.
Well, no one's ever done anything like it. So with the Colts, I think my strategy would be these guys are not on great contracts. However, their contracts are not bad when I trade them because I will be taking all the guaranteed money. And I can take all the guaranteed money because I just want to get this over with. I want to get through them as quickly as possible. I want to be bad for a year and go after that next year's draft class. And I want to get as many assets back for them as I possibly can right now. So that goes for guys like DeForest Buckner would be one guy I'd be looking to trade. Ryan Kelly, Moore. They've got a lot of guys. And there's some guys who I think are not even necessarily on bad contracts that I'd be considering. Jonathan Taylor. I would be out on paying Jonathan Taylor. I don't think it's a good strategy. I hate to say it. I know we've said that like Kenneth Walker was like a really good pick with a second and whatever, and Taylor's good, but if you can get a McCaffrey type package, it's just worth it. It's just good value before you have to pay someone like him, because you've seen what happened. You can be as good of a running back as you want. Offensive line isn't there. It's shot, And maybe even Michael Pittman Jr., because Michael Pittman Jr. maybe falls into that category of like guy who is good and you could get good assets for, but is maybe not so good that you want to pay him what he will end up getting. But I wouldn't be
TJ Hawkinson zone.
He's in that TJ Hawkinson zone. And it's like maybe a contender would be a little bit better off with that, who could be more aggressive with his contract. But I wouldn't feel forced to trade those guys. I would just want to, wait a season and do that type of stuff. The other thing is like when you get into the draft, if I'm them, I'm preparing to get a franchise quarterback. Like I want the number one overall pick. That's what's worked for him. That's kind of how you got to have one of those high picks. So if I could potentially pull like an Eagles type stunt. Last year, the Eagles trade away one of their first for first next year, right? Now they've got two this season. I would not mind doing that. I would not mind the trade down. I also would consider and that goes for all of their picks. I don't think you can fix the offensive line in 1 year, although I'd start working on it now. But if I was going to use those high picks, I'd be saying, okay, let's get a position where a quarterback can come in and actually win from day one. Let's not have a Bears situation where it's like, there's nobody on this team at all, and we've got to go scramble to try to find any sort of receivers. And you're not in that position from a receiver standpoint. If they keep Pierce and Pittman, that's actually pretty close to a respectable receiving core. But I think the things I'd be looking to add this offseason, outside of just kind of having like a Panthers-esque fire sale, is get a receiver who can win in some different ways other than Pierce and Pittman. I think they're just a hair too similar, where it's a lot of deep shot stuff. And then, invest more into the offensive line and get off of these bad contracts. So I'm biting the bullet on the bad contracts and trading them while I can. I'm trading back and trying to stockpile picks next year, and I'm punting till next season. Outside of that, I think I would at least look for somebody. If you could get like someone who is interesting at quarterback, like give a young guy with a third round pick, a tryout for a season instead of just being like, well, we're just going to do nothing at quarterback. I would do that.
When was the last time that a team, a coach got fired midseason? I cannot remember the last time an NFL team brought an interim coach from like outside the staff. Is this situation ever happened before? Honestly, it's
pretty unprecedented. I mean, this is like a little celebrity cameo at head coach. They almost always it's so funny. I morbidly enjoy it just because it's funny, just to promote some like beloved character from like the mid 2000s from your team to be your head coach just when it doesn't matter. Like if the Packers were to fire LaFleur and they brought in like Donald Driver to be their head coach, I would be like, hell yeah, well, who cares? He's not going to be here next year. At least I'm not worried about them hiring the interim in case he does well, which is never something that works out. So like, it's stupid. Absolutely. But
it kind of doesn't matter.
It's funny.
It's like not really that big of a deal, but it's like, it's more the process of it happening is what's concerning rather than like it itself. It is like, I saw someone compare this to it on Twitter. Like it is like when you're playing 2K and you can sign like Tim Duncan to be your head coach or whatever and doing that because they have all the former players. Like you get 8 years into a rebuild, all of a sudden Steph Curry is your assistant coach or whoever. It's kind of like that. But yeah, they need to commit fully to the rebuild. They've got to get off of some of these bad contracts. And if you couldn't find trades for some of them, I'd be willing to cut them. But I don't think there's a path of like we're keeping this core together because I think the core right now is just so like the spending on it is just so out of whack and the age is so out of whack and you're not going to be able to get a quarterback this year unless you like literally lose out and get lucky.
I think they could lose out though. I'll say that. It's Ellinger and Jeff Saturday. All right, like
with a horrible offensive line. Okay, it's
with a horrible offensive line. It's not impossible.
No,
I think that they're going to climb rapidly.
What was the like? Didn't the owner like text Jeff Saturday? It was like, how do we fix our protection?
I'm sure he did.
I had always imagined that they were like both at like a Chili's, and he was like, "Yo, you want coach? All right, fine." That's how. I'm like, how does this happen? How do you be like? I know.
They were drunk, and
my staff members
they were drunk like at a party, and they were like, "Bro, I love you so much, bro. Our offensive line is so bad, dude. You could fix them. We need you to fix them." Oh, I could fix them, dude. I know, dude. Bro, do you want to be the coach, bro? Yeah, dude. I do want to be the coach. I think it was a drunk conversation.
They're getting the $1 shots at Applebee's.
Those chili specials have
the dollar,
in, I'm afraid.
The $1 Long Island iced teas at Applebee's. Throwback to college for me. Jesus.
The Colts rebuild situation isn't, I think, the worst in the world just because they have cap space when they cut Matt Ryan this offseason and he fades into obscurity. Like, they're going to have some money to sign some guys. Their run defense is really good right now. EJ Speed is a guy who's a free agent I would consider bringing back. I would consider bringing back maybe a guy like Paris Campbell to be a depth piece. Like, there's some dudes I think worth bringing back, and the defense isn't crazy far off, and like you said, they've got decent skill position talent. But I think my gold standard for a rebuild is like, we'll see if it's the Lions, but to me it just makes a lot of sense in my head to like build the infrastructure. You've got Jameson Williams, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, you've got a good offensive line, and then you just, as the final piece, you just drop that quarterback in and he's in a place where he can succeed right away. Like, if you can get a top 5 pick and maybe you spend it on a a tackle, and you have Quentin Nelson and you have Kelly, who's not playing very well this year, but is talented, and Nelson, and like maybe there's a world where you can get the offensive, like this is an offensive line season. That's what you spend. You have enough money to bring in maybe an Elton Jenkins. You can spend a high draft pick on one, and then you just maybe Ellinger is your Goff, and then next year you just drop a guy into that structure with Pittman and Pierce and a decent run defense even still, and hope that's enough with a new coach. But the wild card, I think, with the Colts is always the owner. That's something we can't really take into account when we do these things, like in a vacuum. But Jim Irsay is a deeply unserious owner. Deeply unserious. There's a lot of unserious owners, like Jim Dolan for Jim, right? I think it's
James Dolan
for the
his friends call him Jimmy or something. I don't know what exactly.
Jimmy,
no
Jimmy D.
His band calls him Jimmy or whatever.
Like he's a notoriously like unserious owner when I think of them, and obviously Daniel Snyder is like a little bit more harmful than just unserious. But like it's always tough when you've got a guy up top who seems to be very involved in the decision making and just completely impulsive. Those are the two things with the Colts. That's like, I honestly wouldn't hate the state of like how quickly the Colts can turn it around if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, that was something that Colin Cowherd was talking about, where it was like, dude, these impulsive owners.
Oh, wonderful. Well, then I changed my mind.
He was like these impulsive owners, bro. They get on my nerves. And I agree with him, except like there's also the breed of owners that just don't know ball, like just the non-football. It's like the Haslams, right? The Haslams own the Browns, and they were making all these decisions for the Browns, but like didn't know football. And then Hugh Jackson came in and was like, you guys can't be doing me like this. You can't make all these decisions and then fire me when the team is bad.
That reminds me. So I've been watching the Hulu Lakers documentary, and there's a part where Jerry Buss was just like, all right, I wholeheartedly trust anything that Jerry West says, and then they like win championships, and I'm just like, yes, that's pretty much it. Like,
yeah,
like you were in real estate like 2 years ago. You were a smart man.
The thing is, if I was an owner, I can't even blame these owners, because if I bought a football team, damn right I would be like making the decisions.
I'm making a lot of decisions. I'm head coach, and I'm going into special teams.
Dude. I'm everything for that team. I would be. Like, I do not blame the owners for like making hiring decisions or wanting this quarterback or that quarterback and trying to make that happen. Because if you buy a football team, I mean, if you don't have anything to do with them, you might as well just be that you just spend it's like a NASDAQ
write-off.
Yeah, boring. I don't care. I'm in this for the love of the game, man. I'm treating that shit like a 2K game for absolutely.
I'd be so insufferable. I'd be like, every day I'd be like, is this your team? Didn't think so. All right. Anyway, like next up.
I wouldn't even have anyone to tell that to.
You'd fire everybody.
I'd fire every. I'd be the only one. It would literally be just like Madden, where like I'm setting the schemes in the menu.
We're running 4 verts every
scouting
play.
The players.
It's lonely at the bottom.
Scouting the players. I'm just making every single decision. I'm relocating them and changing their name to something ridiculous, like just completely shaping this thing in my image. I do not blame Irsay or any owner who meddles, but it does make it difficult when you're the GM.
It makes it difficult when you're bad at it.
Yeah.
Right. The difference between me and them is like I would be generational. And,
I'd win a lot, but that's just me.
That's just me
personally.
That's just me, Yeah, Matt Ryan would be balling under my watch. So yeah, that's
I don't know.
Matt, I give your rebuild a 4. I don't agree with trading everybody away. I'll say that. I think that you could keep things. I think you can keep this run defense together. It's not like the Saints where you have to eventually get rid of everybody. I think that you can keep it together. And if you can just fix the line and drop a quarterback in, your team looks pretty good. So I'm going to give it you gave me a 3, so I'm going to give you a 3 in a vengeful sort of way and say, I don't like your idea of trading everybody away.
I'm on the same page as Theo, but I'm giving you a 4. I was just like, I think you could just sign some guys. I feel like you.
I actually disagree a lot. I think the problems with the team are like completely fundamental and just who they're spending money on.
I mean, fundamental. That's just owner shit. So like,
I would just sign a bunch of guys.
I would just fire
the
the owner. Actually, that's where we start.
I would hire someone from the Ravens or something and then get a mobile quarterback, because the Ravens are another team that just does not spend money on positions like people think you should spend money. They're like, yes, we will trade and then sign Roquan Smith. We will spend firsts and bring in safeties in free agency. We will, we'll spend a first round pick on a center. They like the Ravens also do that. They send like top picks and money on non-prioritized positions. So I would bring in the problem is who on the Ravens staff is worth bringing in. I'm not signing Greg Roman, but
right.
I don't know.
I
would maybe try to, if my team is built weird, and I don't even think they're built. I mean, they can go in 11 personnel and they have the receivers in the running back, which the Ravens don't have, but I don't know.
I also should say that I don't think it's like trade everyone no matter what. It's like if you get a really good offer,
open to it. It's
like if you get the McCaffrey offer for Jonathan Taylor, I would be thinking about that. Or if you get like a really good offer for Buckner, then I'd be thinking about that just because of age and where the team is at. But it's not like you must trade all the good players for draft picks. Like Pittman would be one where it's like, if you get a really good offer for him, I would think about it. But
if the Rams offer you 2 first round,
right? If the Rams offer
if the Rams come in and Brian Burns him, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, Kofie, what are you giving Matt?
Oh, I'm gonna give him a 4 because any idea that's on this podcast is infinitely better than whatever the owner has cooking up. I feel like the hamster wheel is just going nuts in his head, man. Just like thinking of ideas, and he's like, see, I honestly, so the other scenario I think is that he just turned on ESPN and was like, I know that guy, and then that was instantly how he like made the decision. So.
Or he made one good point. He's like, I think the Colts need to like establish the run more than they have. He's like, there's only one man.
This guy's a genius. Oh,
this guy's a genius. It's so funny.
Bro's gonna hire.
If you guys could have any old player from your favorite teams come back and be the interim coach for the last half of the year, I would pick Donald Driver for the Packers. That would be my pick. But do you guys have anybody who you'd want?
Well, Jim Brown's too old.
And cameo.
Jim Brown is too old.
He is too old.
80-year-old Jim Brown
doesn't know much about the modern game.
I'd probably go with Joe Thomas. I'd probably have to go with Joe Thomas.
That's basically what the Colts did.
It is. No, like to a T.
Like
but like, I don't know. He went into media and then he got.
It's pretty limited when you're a Browns fan.
Yeah, it is pretty limited. I mean, what are we gonna do? Sign get Peyton
Greg
Hillis
Barnage.
in the building? Josh Cribbs. Bernie Kosar, like what are we?
Maybe I do Andrew Whitworth for like the Bengals.
It's not a bad one.
I would.
That's not a bad one. He's fresh.
I would do that.
Just
I'd give that a shot.
Yeah,
like get Zach Taylor out of here. I'm tired of it. Every week, man. I'm sick of it.
Andrew Whitworth has a ring. Does Zach Taylor have a ring?
Dude, I'm telling you, when I was in LA for that during the Super Bowl, and of course you saw more Bengals fans than Rams fans the entire week. And then they're in the game, drank a lot of soju, and then woke up blocked by Darren Ravel. So, it was a great time all around,
Darren Ravel. I haven't heard that name in a while.
Man, I woke up. I was like, okay, I finally got blocked by him. This is good.
I just learned I got blocked by Rashawn Gary on Twitter, which is weird because I don't think I've ever said anything bad about Rashawn Gary. Besides, I think maybe I said I didn't have him in like my top 100 players list that I made after last season, and now I would put him there for sure. But like, I never was like, and I got blocked by Tyrann Mathieu, but that's because I said he doesn't give any effort tackling. Like, I get why he did that. But Rashawn Gary like floored me.
I think it's
the other
so
day.
funny, like players blocking analysts.
I get it. I think that's like
hilarious.
so
Also
understandable.
blocked
Honestly, people are like, "That's weak. You can't do that." Yes, you can. I would block Theo. Like if I was a player and I was bad, and you were like posting my clips of me being bad on Twitter, I would block you, Theo. Is what I'm getting after. If I was like
Patrick Queen has also blocked me for saying that he's not that good in coverage.
Twitter's going downhill. You gotta start, man. I'm blocked by like Randy Edsel, man. Like it's
maybe with what I tweeted something. I said that Cowherd was like a fraud. It got like 10,000 likes. I'm not blocked by him, but maybe that's the one I'll start working on. That'd be a big.
Well, if Cowherd blocked everyone who called him a fraud, Cowherd would not have any
followers.
His whole thing is, I don't block people very often. I get a lot of hate, and like this morning, a Dolphins fan tweeted a video at me. It was like an animation of a knife cutting my skull open and then zooming in, and it's just a bunch of cobwebs. Yeah, someone they tweeted that at me, which is pretty creative, and like. It takes a lot for me to block you. It takes a lot. I'll do it if you're like horrible, but it takes a lot.
If it takes someone going into like an Adobe product to like bring you down, that is the ultimate rent free. Like that man opened up like Adobe
I think that's
Photoshop.
a TikTok filter.
He did.
TikTok filter. Okay.
I think it's a TikTok filter.
Okay.
Now it's not as special.
I will
now you don't feel as special.
You got to go into Photoshop. That's the real like ultimate rent free. Like you did all this work for like maybe 16 likes. It's like all that.
I know.
All that for a drop of clout. All right. So I guess if we're sticking with NFL themes, I'll run through my Raiders fix up real quick.
Is this going to involve trading Derek Carr to the Browns like last year?
No, it is not. This one actually involves keeping Derek Carr.
Okay.
Matt, you made a point that it's high time I get off the Derek Carr train.
You've been fighting this battle for an
I've been fighting this
time.
battle
It's
for
never
7
been
years.
fruitful, man.
7 years, man. I've been fighting the Derek Carr battle. But like the biggest problem with the Raiders is it's just it's a weird team. Their offense hasn't really been that bad. Right? Their offense has not been that bad. They have not been able to finish games. They've been in almost every game they've played except for the Saints game where they got throttled. But in every other, they're in it till like the last second, and then they either don't score or they give up a touchdown or they go to overtime and lose. But the biggest problem is their defense. They have nobody. Now that Nate Hobbs is hurt, like their secondary is completely void of like any substance whatsoever. And I think the first step you need is to get a DB. And my thought was, okay, you're going to have a high draft pick. You might be able to draft a guy. I don't know who is worth drafting yet in the secondary. But I do know that you can definitely trade that pick. Ringo?
From Georgia. He's amazing.
From Georgia? Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple more.
I'm sure there's guys there. But in the spirit of me not knowing, my thought was, why don't you trade one of those picks? Why don't you trade your first round pick for a guy that might be an elite corner? Because that, I think, is what you really need to hold out in these big games.
Do you have one in mind?
So here's, okay. There's a couple options here.
If you say Denzel Ward, I'm going to kill you.
That's totally who you were going to say.
That's
Audible.
No, but no. Here I had a couple. So Denzel was one. Denzel was one option to give the Browns a first round pick back. But the other option would be Lattimore. If you're talking about the Saints need to offload some guys, I think Lattimore would be an interesting guy. The only problem, I don't know if he's quite worth the first round. So maybe
he's not worth a top 10 first round.
Yeah, he's not worth a top 10 first round pick. But again, that's just me not knowing a lot of the guys yet because I haven't been watching a ton of college football.
You want to hear a crazy stat from the Raiders defense? I think Let's see if I can get the exact numbers about their sacks. Max Crosby, I believe, has 9.
Crosby's that's the thing. Crosby's been good. Chandler
Crosby's
Jones.
No one else on the team, I believe, has more than 2 or 3. I think they have like 16 sacks this season, and Crosby has like 9 of them. Yeah. Something completely ridiculous like that.
No, like here's the Raiders are such a fascinating team because they have Crosby, who's really good. I mean, that dude is really good, and they're often like Adams has been playing really well.
Crosby
this
has 6. Perryman has 1. Nate Hobbs has 1. Chandler Jones has half a sack
now. So.
Cleveland Farrell has half a sack.
Yeah.
Those are their sack numbers this year. Tell me that's not the most pathetic thing you have ever heard. Is
get
people
a pass
not
rusher,
named
get a corner.
There is not a single defensive lineman on this team who has a sack. There's 2 that have 0.5. There's no one who's at 1 outside of Max Crosby. That is crazy about their defense.
Hey, all I'm saying is if I'm at quarterback and I line up and I look over and I see that literally any of my receivers have what is Anthony Averett across from him, I'm throwing that up like immediate. Like I'm not waiting for Max Crosby to get. I'm like, oh yeah, he's open. Like sorry, like Rocky Yassin. Like I'm not. No one's scared of these corners, bro. I think that's their biggest problem. Like you can get sacks if you can cover, right? If no one's open, you'll get some coverage sacks. I'm not too worried about the defensive line because you do have Crosby, but man, especially with Hobbs being out, it would be like salvageable maybe, but their defense is just like without a true number 1 corner, it is just truly inept. Like Derek Carr, I don't think has been horrible. He's been not great, right? And that's the thing is like you would expect like the addition of Devontae to like really elevate that offense. And it hasn't, but Devontae's been good. Carr has been meh. The offensive line has been roughly league average, maybe a little bit worse. Jacobs has been good. Josh Jacobs has been good. That's been a pleasant surprise. But it's just like, it's really, I don't know. The rest of this offense has been kind of underwhelming. So I think the 2 things that you need are an offense. I think you need to build up that offensive line a little bit. Build up the offensive line.
But not in the first, but so
not with the first round pick. Not with the first round pick. I think you need to get some offensive linemen. And I think you need to bring in a corner. The problem is that you can't just trade for everyone, and you're only going to have the one really big pick. So then the argument would then be, well, why don't they just go out and get a quarterback? Because it's like, well, if you have a top 5 pick, which right now they are at 3, they would have the 3rd overall pick today. That's why I'm like,
what corner is worth the 3rd overall pick?
Denzel Ward and
Ward. That's the thing is like, none of them are. But it's like I'm not willing to move on from Derek Carr.
Okay,
and that's maybe my heart talking more.
I don't think that's a horrible take. Is like Derek Carr must be replaced immediately. Like I'm okay with running back the skill position talent on the offense, but they need some young talent on rookie deals. They can't. The pick they have is going to be great. Absolutely no world you trade that away. The Gruden and Mayock era messed up so many drafts that there just is not a lot of like young talent. They've got Devontae. He's not on a rookie deal. Max Crosby, that's not on a rookie deal.
Yeah.
You know,
but
Darren Waller, no. Carr, no. Who in the secondary? Like maybe Nate Hobbs at this point. Like he's good.
Nate Hobbs,
but Chandler Jones, no. They just don't have any young, exciting talent. Like,
but they've
got
had
Jacobs,
draft picks. They've had draft picks in the past, and that's why I'm like, what they've been so awful at drafting. Like,
yes, but it's a new GM. It's a new regime. You have to use those picks. Trading away their 1st round pick is, I'm sorry, Blaiden, but I'm giving that a 0 if that's the big move because there's no corner worth that pick. And they're not, if you're going to trade your 1st round pick, you've got to be like the Rams and, you know, They were in the playoffs. They were in the Super Bowl without Ramsey in 2018. Like, they were there. They weren't the third overall pick and trading their picks away, you know? So,
well, okay.
Like, I don't know exactly what corner you should take in this situation either.
You also have to think there's a world in which, like, you could really stockpile some assets. So there's the world in which you try and go all in for next year, thinking that, okay, we have the talent on skill positions, which you do. Derek Carr is a competent quarterback. Devontae Adams is a really, really good wide receiver. Some would say he's the best in the league, but I mean, he's definitely top 5, I think. And then you have Josh Jacobs, who's has really turned it around as a runner. He's going to be a free agent. Do you bring him back? That's a big question. I think you can afford to, depending on what kind of money he wants. Max Crosby is good. But the guys drafting below you, Detroit needs a quarterback. That's the big one. If Detroit is behind you in draft order, I'm calling them.
But I don't think they will be. I don't think the Raiders
maybe they won't be. But that's like who? It's like, we don't know that right now, and that's like
I'm down to trade back. I'm just down to make picks in the top 10 when you have them, because they just need young talent. They need young talent. It's not like it's just hard.
It's hard to know right now what those guys are going to be. So that's why I'm not entirely sold on, like, oh, just like pick whoever. But like if there's a high level player that you feel comfortable picking at that spot, then yeah. But like if you have Detroit behind you, I'm trading back and I'm saying I want that pick and I want like a high level defender. Well, I mean, Detroit doesn't even have a high level defender, so maybe don't even call them about it.
Are you firing Josh McDaniels?
That is
ended the pick in the top 7, because I think that's maybe the most foundational question about the Raiders' future is they stink this year. He didn't do well at his last head coaching job. Have you seen enough? Are you done? Or are you?
Well, not even his last head coaching job. McDaniels, outside of like the Brady era, has struggled to lead like an above average offense. Like in his entire career. Outside of having Tom Brady at quarterback, he has basically been mid at getting high level offenses. I would be interested in entertaining Bieniemy. That I think could be an interesting option. I would be interested in entertaining Bieniemy as a coach. If you brought in Bieniemy and then you could get a corner in some way, shape, or form, that could be the juice you really need. Because I'm not bringing in a defensive coach. I really don't want to do that. But you need juice on defense, and I think you need a corner. That's so foundational to me. All great teams have great corners. I can't think of there's very few I could think of that don't.
The Bills right now,
I guess.
The Chiefs.
But the Bills are great. The Bills are great everywhere else. The Chiefs are great everywhere. It's like you're good enough in enough places to make up for it. But like the
Corners
Rams,
are important depending on the
the Rams won the Super Bowl last year. They had arguably the best corner in football, given he got toasted in the Super Bowl. But he's an integral part of getting them there.
Where I'm at with them, I'm definitely down to fire Josh McDaniels. The hire didn't move me when it happened.
Firing a coach is a tough thing.
After a year, it's really tough. But
it is.
He didn't move me when it happened. The results haven't been good. I don't know. It may be smart to not give up on it, but I would be down to fire him. I would be down to get some young talent on the roster, whether that be trading back from the top 5, whether that be taking a guy. But I think you do have to take a guy and maybe revamp the offensive coaching staff, because they do seem to be underperforming with the amount of talent that they have. And they've got to invest in the defense, though. That's the number one thing. Get young talent on the defense. Get an a defensive player who can get a sack, a defensive lineman who can get a sack.
And that's I think bringing in a corner would help with that. Like if you have someone that you can have as a lockdown corner on one side, right? I love the idea of you put your number 1 corner on the number 2 guy, and then you drape the number 1. I love that style of defense. There's
more than one pick in the draft, right? There's more than one pick in the draft. So
and that's the kind of. The Seahawks got Tariq Woolen in the 5th, so they're more than capable of picking up a corner. But I would Bro, if they took 4 corners in this draft, go for it, dog.
You're underrating Nate Hobbs right here. Nate Hobbs is a real
Yeah,
CB1.
Nate Hobbs is good. He's hurt right now.
That's true.
So right now they're playing with nobody.
Yes.
So give me a fresh high level corner, whether it be a rookie or whether you can trade for someone. Give me the big risk of firing Josh McDaniels right now for me is like, does Bieniemy want to be there? And if you don't want Bieniemy,
do they want Bieniemy? Bieniemy hasn't been hired. He's been in the coaching cycle for like 3 years. And
right. A, do they want Bieniemy? And B, if they don't want, is there anyone else out there that you're like, oh yeah, this would be a great offensive play caller to bring in and be our new head coach? That's the other thing. So it's like it's risky firing your head coach, especially after a first season. So like I'm on board with it, but like it just seems like a risk, and I don't know if that's something you necessarily want to take. And also like first year, things could just not be clicking right now. That could also be it. It could just be like heads clashing, and maybe in year 2 they figure it out. But
firing your head coach all the time, like the one thing that can sink a career is getting new playbooks and new everything every single season. So I definitely see the pros and cons to it. I would probably keep McDaniels around. I'd be down to fire him at like mid-season next year, like Matt Rule or something like that. Or Frank Reich, if something went wrong, that's probably what I would do. But I think the key with the Raiders is just make your picks. You've got some talent on contracts right now. Just make your picks, get some young talent infused in the building. The rebuild shouldn't be that difficult with who they've got on the roster. So yeah, I mean,
I thought this team was going to be good this year.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So it just get some young talent. That's the only thing with there. Like your quarterback, we'll see with Carr, we'll see with McDaniels. I think next year, like give him another year, and if it's bad, you'll just know for sure. There won't be any questions on if you gave him up on him too early if the results are bad again next year. So that's where I'm at with it. Make your picks this season, bring it back, see if you can turn it around. It's been a lot of close losses and blown leads. Like maybe those flip next season. I don't think anything drastic needs to happen. So as far as grades, you were about to suggest trading Denzel Ward for the
I just don't know who the corners
draft,
are. So I was just like, oh, maybe they could trade for a guy. But yeah, once we get into like the scouting era, I'll be like, oh man, this guy's. I mean, because there's not like the viral clip like there was of Kyle Hamilton last year to get everyone excited. Like
you didn't see the Ringo thing versus who did they just play? Tennessee. He just had complete great coverage.
I was mostly just making fun. I was not very sober for that game, and B,
fair enough.
And B, I was just like, bro, this Hendon Hooker dude is so mid. That was my entire experience of watching that game.
Well, what are you guys giving the breakdown here?
I'm gonna give it a 3 because I like the idea of Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid playing each other twice a year. Just need that. Honestly, that sounds like some of the most fun football I could ever like. I'm tuning in for that. Like I'm waking up for that one. Honestly, like,
well, let's see 5 of the tight end shovel like those like.
It's Darren Waller versus Travis Kelce on like
the quarterbacks will spend the majority of the game like trying to get the defense's attention as there's like a direct snap to Waller and Kelce.
It's like Yugi versus Kaiba for like 40 or like a whole hour of football. Like that sounds like so fun to me. Honestly, love that.
All right.
We need more of the Andy Reid tree. Maybe not because Matt Nagy was Andy Reid tree, so we'll see. But there aren't enough play callers like Andy Reid out there. There's too many. There's a million Shanahans.
I mean, how many coaching trees are actually like that successful? The Belichick
right now, it's
not,
just Shanahan.
It's just
right now,
Shanahan.
It's just Shanahan and McVay. But yeah, Matt, how about you?
I'll give it a 4. But I think the idea of like trading a major pick for a cornerback is a bad one, focused mostly on the fact that it would be good for the Browns. It
would be good for the Browns.
It also would not solve their problems, I don't think, that entirely.
Right.
And I think trading a pick that high for a cornerback you also have to pay is just bad long-term management, especially considering that Denzel Ward doesn't stay healthy.
I also think I do like the idea of keeping. I don't really entertain the idea of trading Carr because the whole reason you have Adams is because Carr is there,
Yes,
and they were friends in college. So I do like that about it.
And that hasn't been like a total negative. Like Carr and Adams have been able to connect. It's just when
Adams has had some big games.
I think the big knock on Derek Carr right now is you watch if you just watch the fourth quarter of Raiders games, you're like, dog, these boys can't play.
Eventually you move on,
you'd
but I'm
be
not
right.
sure if it's this offseason with this contract.
Must see witching hour viewing.
Exactly. At least they're that.
Witching hour alert, you know?
Literally. They just cannot play in at the end of games. I don't get it. It's just like 2-minute drill. Nah, dog, they're losing.
Kofie, saving the best for last.
Oh no.
Hit us with your rebuild here.
I'm so glad that BLAIDEN let me know ahead of time that we're doing rebuilds. So I put the Los Angeles Lakers in 4 years of 2K, and
there we go.
And this is gonna. So the thing about the Lakers is that they got 3 expensive players and no picks until like 3008. So the first thing I tried to do was I tried to trade LeBron instantly, but he can't be traded this year because he just signed an extension. So that was already off the table.
Yeah.
Now, secondly, I went to go trading Anthony Davis, trading Russell Westbrook, but all the trades that 2K gave me back were not trades that I would take. So I'm going to go through these trades with you guys and see if you guys would take them or not if you're the other team. All right.
Okay.
So we have Anthony Davis and Dennis Schroeder for Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson, right? No. Right. So I'm like, all of these is like, okay, Anthony Davis and Austin Reeves for Bam and Victor Oladipo. And it's like, if you're the Heat, why would you do that? So all of these 2K trades are obviously like forced trade, turn it on if you want to have fun with this team. You actually have like, so I end up this becomes such like this one of the saddest simulations I've ever done, and that's coming from me who makes fun of mention. This is one of the saddest things I've ever seen. So I'm like, okay, who can I trade? And I trade Patrick Beverly, right? We go to Patrick Beverly. We're all the way down here. I'm glad
that the Stay Hot podcast has led to you having the least fun you've ever had playing video games.
It's definitely up there, honestly. But the thing is that even when it's not fun, it's extremely hilarious. Like you're just like, wow,
yes.
I cannot believe
it's so unfun that
how did you make a video?
Someone out there actually has to do this, which is like I could just turn it off. There's someone out there who cannot turn the game off.
So I trade. So you know the whole formula for LeBron in his career was just it's always been like LeBron and shooting, and the Lakers just didn't do that. So I made it my mission this year I made this my mission in the sim to just like get as many shooters as possible. So I trade Patrick Beverly and the 23 second round pick for Davies Bertans and the 27 first round pick because I'm like, oh, first round pick. I immediately like, oh, we're not winning anything for years, right? So I trade that, and then the Lakers end up going, let's see, they end up going 34 and 48, which is extremely generous, knowing how this season has started. I'm like, this is extremely generous, and of course, they don't have any picks, right? Mm-hmm. So year 2. It's just LeBron and a bunch of like dudes with the minimum. I let Russell Westbrook walk because there isn't like a suitable trade that showed up. So I end up with LeBron, Anthony Davis, Alec Burks, Devontae Graham, like Royce O'Neal, Bertans. I end up with all that. I do that second sim. It goes 34 and 48, right? And now we're like, LeBron is 39 years old, but the game says he's still jubilant. I don't know what for, but so then I get to the next season. I get to try to trade LeBron, and there are no offers. And I'm guessing it's because LeBron is like 39 years old, or who knows? Maybe
that's got to be it.
Like, and so I try to do a package around Anthony Davis, but again, everything I get back is just nothing that's like Anthony Davis and Royce O'Neal for Brandon Ingram and Trey Murphy. Like, I don't see why it's like all of these. I was like, I'm not going to pull the trigger unless I actually see a team doing this. So you end up just stuck. And then in year 3, they win 33 games. And here's where the rebuild starts. LeBron retires at age 40. This is where it starts. So now, Lakers fans, buckle up. You have 2 or 3 more years of this, and it's not going to get any better. So now you have Anthony Davis, and now
how old is AD at this point? He's got to be
80. It says he's 32. I didn't know AD was that. We talk about AD like he's 35, 32.
Right.
I was like, yo,
that surprises me.
I was like, because it's weird. Because I've watched like 8 Lakers games already. Because now that I'm on the West Coast, it's easier to watch local TV dumpster fires. And it's wild to see like Anthony Davis just like whenever he's in the game, it's cool. But then when he walks off, he like just like limps off like a decrepit old man in an Indiana Jones movie. And it's like really just like, I'm like, how many more years of this can happen? So I'm like, I look at the roster in year 4 and I'm like, dude, it's time to ship Anthony Davis. There's nothing here. But now the trade value has gone down. So I've some like full reset button. So now I trade Anthony Davis for Christian Wood and Gary Trent Jr. And then the next season they win 18 games. Russell Westbrook retires. We get the second pick. And then I'm like, I end the sim there because now all these people are creative players. But the main takeaway I get from this is that Lakers, unless there's like an actual trade that happens in the next like year or so, they are cooked. And it takes a lot of delight in seeing that the Lakers are going to be cooked for years because that means that I can get cheap Staples Center tickets. And
there we go.
That's really good for me. So
do you worry about the market value? Do you worry about the market value of just playing in LA, keeping them alive?
I watched the Hulu Lakers documentary, and it's the fact that they LeBron just like fell into their lap. I want to think that there will be an NBA player. Like, I feel like LA is always going to be a destination, whether it's it's like, hey, no matter how bad the Lakers are, they just like got gifted. Not like LeBron was just like, okay, I'm coming to LA, and it's just like, what other? I'm like, no one's ever just sat down and been like, you know where I'm going to. I'm going to Salt Lake City to play for the Utah.
Well,
that's like never happening.
Not in the NBA. To bring this back to what we talked about earlier, Tom Brady going to the Bucks like would be the equivalent of like LeBron going to the Orlando Magic. Like, it just does not happen in the NBA. The Bucks literally had the lowest winning percentage of any NFL team when Tom Brady joined them. I don't know what team that is for the National Basketball Association, but yeah, no, he could have joined any team, and he was like, I'm going to go to the post-Kobe Lakers, and it still worked out because he's LeBron and it's the Lakers.
Dude, I will never forget, as an all-time New England Patriots hater, I'd never forget that pick 6, and I was like, dude, that's it. That's the last of it. We're done.
He's falling off the cliff.
It's over. He's cooked. 2 years later, you're watching the Super Bowl, just like, fuck, how did he get here again?
No!
It's like, dang. Never.
It really he's just a machine sent from outer space, sadly. But I just wanted to, that's just funny that, of course LeBron goes to the Lakers, but we talked about it earlier with the NFL, like small market teams have more of a chance. But you're right. Right.
I think that the Lakers will just the Lakers and even like the Clippers to some small degree, because like they got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, even though they've had a history of just being an absolute poverty franchise. It's just like, there's always the hope that there is somebody that's pissed and they're going to be in a city where they don't want to be in. And then they see LA and are just like, all right, I'll make it work. There's always that. I feel like for the Lakers, there's always going to be just that, like, even if there's a sliver of a chance, as soon as they come out here, they're just going to be like, all right. Where it's like, New York is fun. I lived in New York for 3 years, where New York's kind of funny because it's like the media, the New York media is awesome. Like, it's an awesome place. I love New York City, but I feel like it's a little bit different in terms of just like the vibe. Like
Yeah.
not everybody fits the New York vibe, where it's like, hey, not everybody's built for this New York sports like lifestyle and stuff. But yeah, I feel like LA is always like, yeah, there's so much like, you know, so I think there's always going to be that window open, honestly. So
wasn't it Zach Wilson where everyone was like, the New York media is going to eat him alive?
It's every rookie quarterback
Daniel
ever
Jones
played
and
in
all
New
that.
York. It's every player that's ever played in New York is like the New York media. But
if you've read like a New York Post like headline like on a sport, you get it. You're like, damn, y'all going in. Like
yeah, there is no LA equivalent of the New York Post. The Lakers are trying to thread a ridiculously like small needle here where LeBron and Anthony Davis, their trade value like deteriorates significantly with every passing year, but also they have to surround them with like there's a supply and demand line where with the effect that you're talking about, Kofie, where it's like you need young pieces and you would like to move them, but by the time you get in the position to actually do so, now they're too old. So there's like a sweet spot of like a transition of power here that they're trying to thread this like crazy thin small like thread through the eye of this needle, and I just don't think they're going to do it. I'm mad you were about to say something too, but
and I think that the window I don't think we are talking about this if the Lakers just like had shooters. Like if they just had spacing, I feel like that opens the window up for just like a little bit longer. Like it's nuts, like watching Russell Westbrook drive and then pass it to Lonnie Walker, and then it's like, oh, wide open three, clank. All right, and then they pass it to and then they just pass it to fucking like just like all these people. You see like a wide open shot, and it's like Patrick Beverly for three, no, and I'm just like, these are some of the like. It's nuts. It's like historic.
A crazy NBA stat. A crazy NBA stat that I saw. I was looking at cleaningtheglass.com, looking at some of the teams, and they have a stat on there where it's expected field goal percentage so it's based on where the shots come from, who should have the highest field goal percentage in the league, like who shoots the most efficient shots. Number one is the Los Angeles Lakers. They are taking the easiest shots in basketball at the rim, corner threes. That's what they're doing. They're not doing anything hard. They're not trying to create from the mid-range like some of these other teams, like maybe the Hawks, who haven't been a great offensive team, maybe a little bit underwhelming on offense to begin with. A lot of that has to do is because they're trying to cook from the long mid-range and take like step back, fade away, deep twos all the time, and like those shots just aren't going to fall all the time. That's not what the Lakers' bad shooting is like. The Lakers' bad shooting is literally just you have the worst shooters ever because these are easy shots. Yeah. You are taking the easier shots than anyone else in the league, and you still cannot hit them. So
you probably also have the least respected shooters in the league too.
It's tough, and like I feel I don't feel bad for like. Usually like they won a championship off of it, so like I don't feel bad for the move. Like I would do it again over in a heartbeat, except I would just keep a championship the people that could actually shoot. It's like it's always funny like Lakers because the Lakers fans are, I don't know another fan base that notoriously photoshops like every star, where it's like every like potential Jimmy Butler, put him in a Lakers uniform, like all the, it's just so funny. Where every year and
at this point,
yeah, I love it. I love it, and it's like I bet none of y'all are photoshopping Lonnie Walker. Like y'all, it's what y'all got. Like
the Knicks also do that. I'll never forget that image that was circulating a few years ago of Zion, KD, and Kyrie all in Knicks uniforms as their new big three, and then they ended up with like Julius Randle and like Kevin Knox.
I love talking to Knicks fans about it because I remember like that year before where Julius Randle, it was like the Julius Randle contract year. It was like, oh man, Julius Randle's made the step up. And then the next year I was in a bar in New York on the Lower East Side. My coworker Joe Ali works at Secret Base. He's a Hawks fan, Georgia fan. I was with him and a lot of friends, and we're at a New York Knicks Nets bar, and Julius Randle is just like clanking everything. And Joe goes, and I shit you not, Joe goes, everybody says he's most improved. What did he improve from? Like, loud in the bar. And it's just so funny, and we're just dying laughing because we're all rooting for the Hawks, and we're just like, go Hawks at this point. This is a Trae Young run. It was, oh my god, I was just like,
and all the Knicks fans beat up and outside
because the Knicks fans as passionate as they are, they also they're like aware. They're like, yeah, this is what we've rooted for years, and it was just so chill. Like, I feel like for me, Knicks fans were like, yeah, you can have a conversation with them like rationally and be like, yeah, we know we have these lofty goals and expectations, but we also know that they're not going to come true. Like that was the vibe in the bar. It was so funny. I loved it.
Kofie, I've got to give your rebuild of the Lakers, though, a 0, as it resulted in them getting 19 wins 4 years from now. That's proof that this was not a good one.
There's nothing I could like. There's literally
your
nothing
process
I could
was
do.
Sound. Your process was sound, and I guess that's all you can ask for. Your process was a 7, but the results were a 0.
I'm fine with a 0. That
speaks
totally
more
fine.
to the Lakers
totally
situation.
It's so funny seeing. I saw a couple Lakers fans like a week or two ago. They were being like, "Tank for Wemby," and I was like, "Do they know?
Do they
know?
Do they know?"
I'm like, no. It's so funny. Loved it.
Yeah, I guess I would have to give it. I think I'll give it a 3. I think there's some hope. I think there's some hope with being bad for a long time, but then there's also the hope.
They had
a
lottery pick when your rebuild ended, so there's limitless potential in the year 2026 or whatever.
2027.
There's going to be like
2027.
Like whatever sweepstakes. It won't be Victor Wembanyama, but it'll be someone.
It'll be someone crazier than Victor Wembanyama.
Right,
it'll be an 8-foot guy who
an 8-foot
Allen Iverson
pulling up from center court, like
will be around.
And that'll be the Lakers' new superstar, and he'll be the greatest of all time.
He'll be in every movie, like Shaq. And all of that.
Yeah. But I think that pretty much wraps things up for this episode. Kofie, thank you so much for joining us. And before we head out, make sure you plug everywhere you're at. Let people know where to find you.
Absolutely. I'm on Twitter at Kofie, Kofie. I'm on Twitch at Kofie Y, Kofiewhy. Same with TikTok. YouTube channel is Kofie. I don't use Instagram. That's not important. That's pretty much about it. Love that. Awesome. And also follow Secret Base. Of course, Fumble Dimension, all of us at Secret Base. So love that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, from Corn Boy, Bird Boy, and Lemon Boy, we will catch you all on the flippity flop.